How about that one?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another UCR Real Talk Roundtable. Who have we got with us this evening today? I don't know. It's everywhere. We have the lovely Jeffrey Emmett. Hello.
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Jeffrey's bilingual and everything today. It's very exciting. Luke, how are you today?
I am okay, which is good for me. So yeah, hey.
Exciting. And of course, last but definitely not least, we have the lovely Miss Katie Underwood. How are you, Katie, today?
I'm excellent. I think I'm the only person on the panel that's actually had a great sleep, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
So yes, today's
I'm the
topic.
stable one.
Today's topic,
Yeah,
we're going to talk about
surprisingly.
something that everyone wants, needs, and when you really want it, you just can't get it. No, it's not sex, it's sleep. So this is, probably a very different topic for UCR, but it is something that's quite important. I'm going to hand it over to Katie straight away because you were the one that kind of said, hey, let's discuss sleep. And we went, hey, that's probably not a bad idea. So why do you think sleep is so important, Katie Underwood?
Look, to give you some background and how I've become aware of how it's important, as I'm sure many people have, we've all had periods of our lives where we struggle to sleep. But I think it really came to the fore in my years when I worked in a drug and alcohol counselling centre. And in any form of recovery, other than taking someone away from their addictive substance, the first thing that all of the wellness practitioners and health support staff will look at is the client sleeping, because without sleep, it's very hard to regulate your energy levels, to boost your immune system, to activate a fitness program or anything else. Really, sleep is kind of the baseline foundation for a person's health. And of course, that applies to you whether you're in drug and alcohol recovery or not. As ordinary humans, anyone will tell you if they're not sleeping well for more than 2 or 3 nights, everything goes out the window. The types of food that you'll choose, whether you can exercise, your emotional regulation, everything just disappears. So I think it's really important that we kind of talk about, what we're getting. Also, I think there's a lot of myths around what the normal amount of sleep is, what we think we're supposed to get as opposed to what we actually need. And there's huge variation in that. So, yeah, I just felt like it was useful to raise the conversation. Maybe we can all talk about kind of what our personal experience of sleep is. And then I'd really like to introduce some healthful sleep hygiene tips that I think lots of people perhaps aren't aware of, the things that they can do to help themselves, that maybe it's information that isn't readily available out there. But I quickly just scribbled down a few things that I was aware of, and I had to stop at like 20 because my page got full.
She's our guru.
But maybe first let's talk about where everyone's at with their sleep patterns. What's your normal and what are you getting right now?
Look, I feel I should go first.
Yes,
I'm feeling it because I am a shift worker. I'm an RN who works in a hospital, so I'm on rotating shift, so I never have a normal sleep schedule. And it was starting to affect everything, including my daughter's sleep patterns, because, I'd be picking her up at 11 p.m. at night after I finished my shift, driving from my mother's house and then drive back to my place. And then, the next morning I'd be completely wrecked, but trying to get up and get her to kindy or daycare. I was burning out very fast, and I think the guys on the show noticed it as well, because doing this is fun, but I was not even enjoying it as much anymore because I was just flatlining. Night, just a few weeks ago, I was on shift an evening. It was about 6:45 at night, and an old friend of mine rang, who is now leading the COVID jab project, and was like, do you want to come and do that? It's still under the same employer and everything. And I'm like, absolutely. I just had 3 code blacks, which is when people are that violent that you need to call security. And I'm like, absolutely, I'm done. I'm happy. And now I've been sleeping every night. I do big days though. I have to travel a lot because we're doing this all up and down the coast and whatever. I'm still feeling so much better. I'm feeling so much more engaged in everything, and like I'm talking with people more, and I'm loving it. Like, it's just, I didn't realize how flogged out I was until I wasn't flogged out as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
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 There we
And
are.
look, perfect indication there that, your baseline needs are not met. And then it basically all the dominoes start to fall. Your ability to experience joy, your experience of life in general
Totally.
kind of brings you into this insomnia-induced depression, if you will. That, a couple of
Absolutely.
solid nights
I was
sleep
actually,
and suddenly your baseline comes back up.
I was starting to feel like I was losing my shit. Honestly, Katie, like I was feeling like I was having like some kind of breakdown, which is, a pretty raw thing to admit, but I was like, shit, I'm not even coping with cutting sandwiches and shit for my daughter's lunch anymore. Like, this isn't normal. And I knew it wasn't normal, but I just kept going and going and going and going until the point where I don't know, I probably would have just stayed on that treadmill until I ended up catatonic or whatever. And only now that I'm sleeping again and that I'm like, this is really important that I try and keep kind of hours. I know this isn't going to be forever, but I don't think it's healthy for me with a young child to go back to rotating shift work as a single parent, because I just decided to do life on hard mode.
So there have been a lot of studies to show that the response times of shift workers or people who are chronically sleep deprived are about the same level as a drunk driver.
Exactly.
So
And most of these shift workers are like health workers and stuff who should be on the ball, and they're not because we're fatigued.
Yeah,
Completely
so
fatigued.
it's a very real concern in that industry, in any industry where people are working shift, whether you're talking frontline healthcare, whether you're talking long haul drivers, and not surprising that often that trucking industry is prone to drug use because they're trying to manage the dangers of sleep deprivation. Not to say that drug use is going to make the response times any better, but you can certainly understand the appeal. Because
of why they would use a stimulant, yeah.
Yeah, because the alternative is they're going to not respond quickly enough when things arise, and then you've got terrible road accidents happening. So I think sleep in those industries and other industries are really important. But even just for the ordinary person at home managing a life, work, and a family, we all want to be as much at our best as we can. And if you're not sleeping, it's really, really hard to kind of put your best foot forward. Jeffrey, what about you? Where are you at with sleep at the moment?
Hot Mess Express. The last 2 weeks.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at you.
No, it's true. Listen. And I learned years ago that I need sleep or I'm just emotionally unstable. I don't do well. I'm snapping. I hate everybody. I'm cranky. I don't function well. And when I was younger, I think maybe it probably played a big role in my life because we'd go out, especially after drinking. I did not sleep for crap. Now I still struggle. Like I'll maybe get like 3 to 4 hours and I wake up constantly. It's not good. It's not good. It definitely makes me a miserable human being.
Yeah. So, you raise an interesting thing. I think for a lot of people that experience insomnia, they think, well, I need to just kind of stay in bed for 8 hours, and yet you're waking up constantly. And one of the things that I learned from a lot of the wellness practitioners when we were working in the recovery mode is that getting a consistent 4-hour block is kind of like the minimum acceptable level, to remain somewhat sane. So if you're not getting that, then I think, you definitely need to look at taking some different steps, having some interventions, and looking at your overall sleep hygiene and things that you might do to improve that. The ideal, I think, on average for an adult, surprisingly enough, is 6.5 hours. We get this whole 7-8 hours being the Disney fairy tale sleep amount. But from my personal and professional experience, if you're getting 6.5 hours of quality sleep, you're actually doing really well. And the older we get, the less solid blocks of sleep we need. So, if you're getting close to 6 hours, actually that may well be enough for you. But yeah, less than 4, and I'd call that problematic. So we'll talk about how we might help you a bit later. Yeah.
But it is strange, Katie. Like,
I'm a bit of a strange beast because I grew up so in the performing arts. So I would be in dance class until 9:30 at night, 3 nights a week during high school years, and etc., and then coming home and eating dinner at that time, and then doing homework and which led to me being a night owl now, and I worked in hospitality for nearly 12 years as well, so that didn't really help. You come home after working full time, but the jobs that I have, let's put it this way, let me function on the sleep that I can get. So when everyone else is at work during the day, it's not unlike me to go, hey, I've got a couple of hours, I might just go have a sneaky day sleep, which is amazing. I think I sleep better during the day, which is strange, I know. But nighttime, my brain doesn't stop. Nighttime is actually when I get my best creative ideas, and I'm like, I should get up and write something about that. I should do something like that. I'm going to go edit some music. I'm going to go do this, and this, and this, and this. And then I look and it's 4 o'clock, and I go, oh, should go to bed. Radio. And then it's like, and then if I have to be up at 8:30, I'm like, what's going on? Who's there? But yeah, as you said, I think I know that to function and work well during the day, 5 hours is what I need. And then I'm like, yep, I'm good to go. If I can get 5 hours, I'm like, yep, sweet. So I look at the clock and I'm like, yeah, I can do this. But I have the benefit of being able to, look at the clock at 3:30 in the afternoon sometimes and go, oh, well, nap time. And which is, perpetuates the cycle, I guess. But, hey, you can do it.
I think that's where you're getting your balance. You've got your 5-hour block, but then you've got your power nap, at another time of day, and that's kind of helping sustain you. Luke, you were going to jump in and share something earlier?
I was going to talk about like insomnia. Like, it's so weird because now that I've come off this shift work for now, like it's only been like, this is week 3 for me where I'm having like normal sleep cycles. I'm finding it really hard to sleep. I'm waking up through the night all the time. And like, I was awake this morning. Like, look, when I do editing for this show, my best work is, like Steve said, during the night. I'll stay up and do an all-nighter. I'm like, you know what? It's whatever. I'm not working tonight. I'm going to sit up for 6 hours because it'll take me about 6 hours to do a proper edit, like of an interview or whatever. That's when my best work gets done. I might start at 9 at night, finish at 3 in the morning, then go to sleep. I'm finding now that I'm having normal sleep patterns, it's not happening for me. I keep waking up all the time. And, and I'm waking, like this morning I woke up, it was like 5 a.m. and I'm like, oh, I don't have to be up until at least 7. So I'll try and sleep again, and then I can't sleep. I'm just laying there like, oh, well, what do I do?
See, I'm the same, because I know if I try and go to sleep before 12 o'clock at night, I'm asleep for an hour and a half, and then I'm up for the next 5 hours going.
I thought you were going to say 5 days.
It's like, literally, if I did it to myself the other night. I made the mistake of coming home and I went, I might just lay down on the, and then I was out for an hour, and then I woke up and it was 12:05, and I'm like, well, this is good.
I looked
at the clock at the next time I felt tired, and it was 3:45. I'm like, oh, that's upsetting.
I hate it.
Well, I was about to say, look, my mum does night shifts. She's still nursing in her 60s as an RN, and she does only night shifts now because they're less hectic, but they're taking its toll. My mother, I think, sleeps maybe 2 hours a day. And I don't know how that woman copes, but she just keeps going and going and going. And when she has her little days off, it's not unusual for me to go around to my mother's house at any time of day and she's just completely comatose.
Yeah.
Like, because that's when she's
Yeah.
getting her sleep. Like, it's her moment. Like, she'll just crash when she crashes. And I think, yeah, big time shift work is not good for people. I think they'll probably find in like years to come, it's probably just as bad as, you know, inhaling asbestos. You know, it's just not
Look, I
good
think
for your health.
I think it depends. I mean, some people can adapt, and there may be some people who are able to work, you know, consistent night shifts and then consistently sleep through the day. But I think it depends what you're able to do. And the key word with any sleep pattern is consistency. It's actually possibly not so important what time of day you sleep, whether you sleep from 8 p.m. at night to 4 in the morning, or whether you go to sleep at midnight and sleep through till 5, but that your routine is consistent. And I think the challenge with shift workers is if you're on a rotating shift, your brain and your circadian rhythms never get the chance to adjust. So, you know, I think it's a
It's
question
good
of
you
how
bring that up,
how you
Katie,
manage
though.
that.
Like with, like,
Yeah.
you know, like with melatonin and a lot of shift workers are on melatonin, you know, shifts over melatonin. I've never done it because I thought, like, you know, I'm one of those people. I'm like, if I don't need to take something, I just don't want to take something. But I see why they do, and like, sort of now I'm at the point where I'm trying to sleep normally. I'm like, shit, maybe I do need to have something.
Look, the advantage of melatonin, and for the benefit of those who are not aware what melatonin is, it's a hormone that everybody produces naturally in the brain when it's time for sleep. And one of the most common triggers for the body to produce melatonin is the changing tone of light in the sky. So this is why some people will find it more difficult to sleep at certain times of the year, if there are longer days or there's more light or less light. And it's also the reason why we encourage a more of an orange light coming into our sleep time, because this is one of the things that can help trigger the natural release of melatonin in the brain. But obviously for people on shift where the brain doesn't know what the fuck is going on from one day to the next, helping introduce higher doses of melatonin in the brain for them is a way of sort of naturally supporting sleep. So, you know, I think it's misleading to think of melatonin supplement in the same way that we might think of, you know, other sleeping tablets or sleep aids. I think it's a really great sort of natural remedy to help support you if you're struggling. But there's lots of other things we can do without popping a pill. So maybe we need to, before I go into sort of sharing with you some of the things that I'm aware of, can I ask each of you what you do to prepare yourselves for sleep? Because I want to raise this. I think a lot of people, you know, we live in a world where we work, we play, we eat, and people think we're like robots, that sleep is like turning a switch on and off. Oh, so I'll be busy all day, and suddenly now I want to sleep. And that we expect it to happen instantly and easily, and then get upset when it doesn't. Because we're not robots, right? We're human beings, we're emotional creatures, we're mental creatures. And we have all of these senses that need to be satisfied before we feel safe and secure enough to go to sleep. So let's just have a little roundtable and see, what do you do, if anything, to ease yourself into your sleep at the moment?
Me?
I used to pop
Jeffrey,
pills.
you want to go first?
Jeffrey, you go.
Well, the doctor gave me pills. So for a couple of years, I was taking, you know, some trazodone, which was nice to knock me out quick in this window, but I had to be in the bed. And now I'm not on it, and I tend to put the kids to bed, and I try to go to bed with them. My kids are a solid 12 hours, and now I'm like, well, if I'm there, maybe I'll actually sleep. It doesn't tend to happen, so I'll get up a lot. But really, I'm horrible at bedtime. I don't have a calming thing. I'm trying to get into watching a certain lady's videos before I go to bed. I try to read because that helps. Like, reading will knock me out, but then it's staying asleep that is really more my issue. You know? And I've always felt like I sleep best from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Like, those are my magic hours of where I get the, like, and I can't do that because I have kids.
Yeah.
Sad.
But see, you have imagine that you have a very detailed process for helping your kids get ready for sleep. So let me ask you, what do you do to help them get ready for bed?
Well, we do
Just
the
give me
whole
a couple of things that
routine.
you do with them.
Book,
So tell me, what is it?
bath,
Yep.
books. We're coming down. We're getting into the bed. Yeah, they have a whole routine.
So this is the thing, it's like, why do we think as adults that we don't need the same things that we needed when we were kids to get to sleep?
Because
right?
it's the
There's
only
a certain
time we
amount
can have
of
to ourselves. Sorry.
Yeah, but there's if we were to treat ourselves like we treat our children in the way that we ease ourselves into sleep, there's a lot of evidence to show behind all of these physically settling, the bathing, the storybooks, the reduced light, all of these things are things that adults need too, perhaps more so because we're so hyper stimulated mentally to kind of ease ourselves into sleep. So you probably know all the things you do. You just have to create the adult version of it.
Yeah.
But we'll get back to that. Luke, do you want to jump in next? What do you do, if anything, to help yourself prepare for sleep? Or do you just like drop into bed and go, I'll just hope for the best?
No, look, honestly, mine is putting on like flub TV that I don't even have to focus on. So it will just put me to sleep, but I need like something that's occupying my mind to sort of wind me down, because especially if I finish like a late shift and whatever, and it'll be just something trash like Judge Judy or whatever. So, I'm not really that invested in it, but, it might be interesting if, this bitch shows money for a poodle or whatever. But yeah, like I do that a lot, and I find, like I try not to do it for my daughter a bit because, my big thing is because when she's being looked after elsewhere, she can have iPad and whatever, and she's into all of that. That's all removed, and then we may read a book. Every now and then I'll put on a show she likes on YouTube on the television, so she's not like directly able to scroll or touch or whatever. And that nursery rhymes or a show she watches, and then she'll fall asleep to that. And I find that works for me while I'm doing my wind down process, because if I'm finishing a late shift especially, I'll be having a shower at something ridiculous at like 11 p.m. at night and trying to get myself to sleep. And it kind of takes me back to I was listening to a lot of, and I don't do it anymore, and I wonder why I stopped. I was listening to a lot of meditations. When the end, oh God, am I going to go there? Yeah. Look, I was in a shit relationship. These boys know that. When that sort of the final gasps of that horrible relationship that I was clutching to ended, I started listening to a lot of, meditations that were sort of would put you to sleep, and they were working. I actually could sleep because I had this waves of fucking PTSD were hitting me, because I realized how shit the last 5 years had been. And that worked for me. And then I sort of got to a point where I'm like, okay, no, I was sleeping fine. I was good, solid sleep. So I was working GP land. So I was doing, 8:30 to 5, good hours. And I sort of got to a point where I thought, oh, I don't need it anymore. I'll be fine. But then I found once I started working at the hospital, I've been, it'll be SVU, Judge Judy, whatever, after a random shift. So I'll just tune out and fall asleep. So I'm not sure if that's a good way to crash out, but that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's understandable. We all go for what works. It may or may not be the best thing for your brain chemistry, but certainly some of the things about one of the articles I just read is that people, and it was actually an article on children and looking at children that have sensory processing disorders and how that might affect you when you go to sleep. And some of the things it raised is all of the different tactile ways that we experience our world and how that affects us. So it might be something simple like the materials that you wear to go to sleep. You know, are you hypersensitive to tactile stimulation? Do you need to wear something soft, or conversely, do you need to wear nothing at all? And that might help you as you go to sleep. On a visual spectrum, some people need a visual soft stimulus to go to sleep. So for kids, the version is the nightlight. Maybe the adult version is that, you know, television stimulation that's not mentally stimulating overly much, but yet your eyes have something to kind of zone out to. So that might be the category that it's in for you. But then there's also the possibility with television tends to produce more of a blue light, which our brain associates with being awake, as opposed to a more orangey or yellowy light. So the light of a salt lamp, or there's lots of apps actually now you can get on your computers and your phones that once the time gets past about 7 p.m., it will switch your device light either to dark mode or orange mode. And this can be more helpful to actually inducing your brain into this, it's nighttime. So like I have my iPhone setting on dark mode after sunset. So after 7:30, it just automatically switches everything to a black screen background. There's less blue light coming in. And because I am kind of often a late night phone user, but it doesn't disrupt my brain's ability to drop to sleep when I can. So I think with the TV stimulus, you know, it's not to say it's a bad thing or not. I think it depends on person to person. It sounds like that's working for you, but it also sounds like that audio interest as well. And this is that other factor that we can look at with sleep hygiene. Some people need to be in a totally silent room. You know, maybe part of the reason that you're not. Yeah, everyone's going, no, not me. But perhaps more so. We're more able to be induced into a state of sleep with that white noise sound. So whether it's a specific podcast or the sound of someone's voice, which is always soothing, or whether it's even like literally white noise on a television or that soft sort of audio interest in the background that helps kind of soothe you and settle you. So I think one of the really interesting things about sleep hygiene is there's no one size fits all for everybody, but I think it's really important to kind of look at, well, what do I need more of or less of when it comes to sleep time, and how's that going to help me? Steve, what about you? What kinds of things do you do when you go to sleep? What do you do to help yourself, if anything?
Well, see, I used to be like Luke. I used to have the TV on, and I realized that would wake me up more during the night. So now, for the last,
did that bitch pay for the poodle?
Oh my God!
I don't care. I don't watch Judge. I don't watch Judge.
I was laughing. That's amazing.
That's been a while though. So I used to do that all the time, but I stopped doing that. But I'm kind of guilty of sleeping wherever I can, whenever I can. Like, this is really bad, but I fall asleep in the bath. And I'm like, oh,
why is that bad?
You're gonna die. You're gonna be like What Lies Beneath with Michelle Pfeiffer girl.
I'm like, I'm so happy and cocooned, and then I hear myself snoring. I'm like, that's a bad idea. Sit up, get out, and go to bed. But I'm as you said before, it's quality. Like when I was doing full-time performing arts study, my housemates thought I was the strangest creature in the world because we would get home for a day full of dance and everything, and it'd be 4 o'clock. I'm like, all right, I'll see you in 10 minutes. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'll see you in 10 minutes. I would go, have my disco nap. 10 minutes is all I need. Get up. And it was like, I'd had 9 hours. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. And they were like, we're exhausted. I'm like, nah, man, let's go. What are we doing? We're going to have dinner. We're going to do this. And then they'd all be asleep. And I'd be sitting there going, yeah, this is great. Yeah. But I know, I'm a strange bird. But
you've mastered the art of the power nap. And I think that's great. You know,
anywhere and everywhere. I'm just like, if I go to sleep, it's kind of like when you get older and you know when you have to poop, you got to poop. You're like, I have to poop now. I don't care where I am. I'm going to poop. I'm like, I'm going to sleep. I don't care where I am. I'll sleep. But, yeah. Like I do have, I guess, what you would call occasional insomnia, where I will literally just lay there and go. And I try and be a good boy and not do the phone thing and just sit there. But then, like, after 10 minutes, I'm like, there'll be something on Facebook. And then especially with international friends, you're like, well, it's 1 a.m. here, which means it's Jeff's like,
Yeah,
what are you doing awake? I'm like, don't you worry. I'm like, let's talk about the show.
My favorite thing when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, I know I can message these two fools because they're going to be on the same time.
It's always chat o'clock somewhere, right?
Yeah. It is, right? But I feel like I'm getting better at it the older I get. Like, I know that probably when I needed more sleep, like when I was studying and stuff like that, it would have been better to, get more sleep. But yeah, I'm in a good spot now where the jobs that I have at the moment, I can get what I need when I need it, as I said before. But I don't really have. I used to read a lot more. I don't read anymore because I have time to read. But yeah, now it's TV off. Like, I'll watch it, but I go, all right, you have to turn that off. Otherwise, I will literally. I'll hear it and I go, huh? And wake myself up again. And then, but yeah, TV off. I like a dark room, but the best sleep I ever get is in a hotel room. And I don't know what that is.
Blackout curtains, probably.
Probably. I was like, someone else's bed. Oh.
Yeah. So hey, let me ask you this. And this was something that I learned in the wellness center where I used to work. And I think it's a really simple thing that a lot of people are in denial about. And that's caffeine. So, many of us will drink, 1,000 of, right? Okay. You know where I'm going with this.
Good morning.
So if I ask you, how many cups of coffee or tea do you drink in a day, Luke? On average.
Okay, I'll be honest. I don't even have coffee in my house. I don't drink coffee when I'm at home, ever, ever, ever. I drink shitloads as soon as I walk into that hospital. There's caffeine everywhere. And I'm just like, so if I'm doing morning shift, I'll pump probably 2 cups of coffee before 7 a.m. rolls around because I'll get there 1:45. I'll pump probably 2 cups of coffee before my shift starts because I know I've got to be on it for the next couple of hours. That's the busiest time. Same as night shifts when I'm in the hospital. Coffee. When I'm home, like I go through phases where I'll drink like something like Pepsi Max. And I'll like every now and then I'll buy in my 20s I lived on it. I don't even know how my organs are still here. I would live on it in my 20s and barely drink water. And I would still have normal sleep though. I was just thinking as I'm older, sleep's a harder thing to do. When I was young, I was coping with shift work. I was coping with, drinking 10 cans of Pepsi Max a day and still going to sleep as soon as I was like, okay, it's bedtime. So I try and cut out, like I don't have any caffeine in my fridge or cupboard right now. And that's just a thing that I've never really been drawn to. Like often my mum will come over my house and go to make herself a cup of coffee and then she'll be like, oh, you don't have any. I'm like, you can have a water.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you something now that you're not gonna like very much.
Okay.
So
give
you've
it to
already
me.
Established one.
Give it to me, Underwood.
One major thing, which is our bodies change dramatically as we get older, and our bodies produce less melatonin and less other supportive hormones in our body to help us sleep. So it does get harder to have a good sleep as we get older. So we need to make changes to how we do this. So if I was working a daytime job, generally speaking, if I'm having trouble sleeping, and let's say I want to get to sleep by 10 p.m., then I would have to stop all caffeine at 2 p.m. So we're talking 8 hours from when you have your last cup of caffeine to when you want to get to sleep. Okay, so you can see now where there's a huge gap, because if you're having coffee your whole shift, and then you've got a 2-hour window between maybe when you finish work and when you expect to go to sleep, forget it. That caffeine is still having a massive impact on you for up to 8 hours from the last cup that you had. So, one of the first things I would suggest to anyone who's having trouble sleeping is you need to look at when your last dose of caffeine is and when you want to get to sleep. And it doesn't matter what time of day that is, but you need to kind of count back at least 6 hours, if not 8 hours, and go, that's when I'm going to have my last cup. And actually what I'm going to do, because immediately you're going to say, well, how do I stay awake at work? And I'll tell you something else really radical about fighting fatigue. It's water. one of the first symptoms of dehydration is fatigue. And we think,
Yeah.
how do I keep myself awake, keep pumping myself with caffeine? Or in fact,
It
if we have
dehydrates you more.
yeah, if we had a big bottle of water instead, or if water's boring, you know, herbal tea or something else that's actually going to hydrate you, you'd be amazed how much you're able to stay awake and alert, as opposed to the habit, and it is just a habit of going, oh, it's just easy. There's a coffee machine. I'll just grab that. So in your case, that would be my first and best suggestion, and that might be all it takes. How amazing would that be? If you
That
change
would be
just right. If you change just that one thing, okay, after whatever o'clock time it is, you know, 8 hours prior to when you want to get to sleep, let's say you want to get to sleep at 11 p.m. Okay, well, I'm not going to have any caffeine after 3 p.m. And I'm going to have water or some other variation of water, not sugar, but water.
No, bitch.
See how you go.
But, you know, like most people, though, will have like a caffeinated drink or whatever with their dinner. Like, you know, that's very,
and
like, but I guess because we don't think about it, do we? Like, we just think,
if they're sleeping well, then it's not a problem. It's only a problem if it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
So some people will say,
True.
I can have caffeine at 6 p.m. and drop to sleep at 10. Well, fucking good for you. You know, if it's not affecting you, right? But we all are affected by caffeine differently. And it was one of the big learnings for me, that even though I'm only having 2, maybe 3 cups of coffee a day, which compared to some is like nothing, I still need to stop my caffeine intake, you know, around 2 p.m., 3 p.m., or I just won't get to sleep before midnight. And it's that simple. And I can be doing all sorts of other weird stuff in my bedroom that's probably not technically good for sleep. But it's really, for me, it's as simple as that, in generally speaking, if nothing else is, you know, going wrong, managing caffeine intake is a huge win. So something to try and see how you go. What about you, Jeffrey? Where are you at on the caffeine scale? Does that resonate with you?
Mastered that pretty early. As a kid, the only time we were allowed to drink soda was at dinner time. And then growing up, it was actually road trips. My ex and I would always road trip, and we would, you know, do the 5-hour energy shots, pumping Red Bull. And I'm like, I'm tired. And then I connected with water, and I did realize how much better I could stay awake, and it wasn't an issue. So I'll have, well, probably by the way a coffee pot is 4 cups, I guess, in a big container. But it'll take me from like 7 in the morning to maybe noon to drink all that. And if I have a Coke or anything, like one night after Steve had like showing his can of Coke, and I'm like, oh, they had one in a long time. I had one. I was up for hours.
Yeah.
Couldn't sleep. I was wired.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't. I can't have any caffeine. I can't. No.
So that's good. Now look, one of the other things that can really help when it comes to sleeping relates to something called proprioception. Do you guys know what that is?
Is this something to do with coming?
So proprioception is also
Jeffrey.
known as kinesthesia. So in short, I'll read you the actual definition and then I'll tell you the layman's term. So it's the sense through which we perceive the position and movement of our body, including our sense of equilibrium and balance. So the short version of that is it's our brain's ability to know where we are in the world. So if anyone's ever looked after a small baby, you know, the swaddle thing, we wrap these babies kind of firmly.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And what happens? They're like, wah, and they're out, right? Because their proprioception is taken care of. Suddenly their brain knows exactly where their body ends and the rest of the world begins, and it's extremely calming. Mm-hmm. So again, as adults, we still have this proprioceptive sense of where we are in the world. And this is one of the reasons why weighted blankets have become really popular. And for some people, they work really, really well. So it's one of those things that you kind of, the weighted blanket creates this light pressure on your body and kind of gives your brain that additional marker. You know, back in the olden days, all the blankets were really heavy, made of solid, dense materials. I remember I used to go to my grandma's place and she'd have like 8 blankets on the bed and I'd be strapped down under these blankets, kind of feeling like I couldn't
a
move,
lot of old
but it would
people
help me
love
sleep.
a lot of texture,
Yeah, so-
even if it's not cold and they will just want the weight. Yeah, I've
That's
seen that
right.
just working as a nurse.
And without knowing the science behind it, they know that works, whereas in our modern generation, we have all these light, fluffy doonas that weigh nothing. But actually, it might well be that this is working against us. So I think for some people, exploring the idea of having a really heavy blanket or even one of those proper weighted blankets can really help you settle. I actually bought them for my 2 children. Now, one of them tried it for a bit and then found, I don't have any problem sleeping. But my other daughter really, really loves it. She's more that hyperactive, mentally active, late night thinker type, like you described, the night owl type. And even on a hot night, she's like, no, I need the weighted blanket. And she has her teddies around her and she's like, I need to feel safe. And when she's got that kind of swaddled feeling, she'll drop off much more easily.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, what's the deal? I'm one of these people that has to have a fan on as well.
Me too.
So that's white noise.
What's that about?
So what
But
that's about?
For me, it's a body temperature. Like
Yes.
it can be freezing cold. Like in the middle of the night, if I wake up, I'm like, I want the fan on. I turn the fan on, and then I get under the blanket anyway.
Yeah. So
what's that about?
So there's 2 things going on there. So one with the fan is possibly the white noise, the auditory stimulation that you're getting, actually the noise of the fan. But what you're referring to is the temperature control. So this is another common misconception. The fact of the matter is that our bodies need to cool down to a certain temperature to be able to sleep. Now, anyone who's tried to sleep in the middle of summer will tell you if you're too hot, it doesn't matter how many fucking drugs or tips or tricks you use, you're just not going to get to sleep. And this is because our core body temperature has to drop for us to be able to fall into that sense of sleep. So I know it seems counterintuitive to think, why would I put the fan on then hop under the blanket? It's actually telling me that you need to have that feeling that your body is cool enough and then you can go to sleep. I
have the same thing with like him, except everybody bitches when they come in my house at night because I keep it at 60. The air conditioner is on 60. My bedroom is a meat locker. Joe and I would have the window open in the middle of winter and the fan was going and I have to have wind blowing on me. I'm like Mariah Carey at Bedtime. I had hair. It's got to be blowing, but I have to be in a blanket. I want to be under that blanket and I want to be cold.
No, that's right. And so you're tuning into the fact that your body temperature needs to drop.
And
so,
usually it's going up at night.
Yeah, so it's another common problem. And it's actually one of the reasons why having a shower or a bath just before bed can be very helpful. And it seems counterintuitive, but I'll explain what happens physiologically when you have a bath or shower. So you get into the bath or shower, it's hot, right? You think, how's that going to help me? But actually when you come out of the shower, and your body temperature, by contrast, goes from being very warm to very cool because your body's homeostasis is such that it's always trying to bring you back into equilibrium. So immediately when you get out the shower, your body's working much harder to help your body temperature to drop. So it's a great time to kind of jump into bed, allow your body temperature to cool down, and then you're more able to sleep. So, for some people, if you've got ducted heating or other things going on in the household, or maybe that you're actually sharing a bed with someone whose core body temperature could be keeping you awake. And this is why a lot of the older generation too sleep separately. We don't think that's very romantic, but actually on a practical level, it can really help people with their own sleep hygiene, because then you're not competing with far out. I love you, but you're really, really hot next to me in my bed. And I'm not able to settle because of it. So that's another really simple thing.
I Love Lucy had a separate bed to her husband.
Yeah, so they can both get a good night's sleep, right? Because you
This
know,
she
her
looked
husband was a
fabulous.
snorer.
I always Joe was like a blanket. He was an inferno. Like you could walk in the bedroom and the temperature was just, if it was the door was shut, it'd be warmer in the bedroom because he just burned so much heat in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And Gabe is like that. And he ends up in bed with me all the time. And I'm trying to shove him over because he's burning up. And I'm like, oh, he's so hot. He's sweating. He's making me sweat. I'm like, kid,
Yeah.
you got to get out my bed.
Look, I mean, I don't have a partner in my bed at the moment, but it's the reason I can't co-sleep with my kids, and I never have been able to because
it was
they're like
such a
little
mistake.
hot blankets,
Yes.
right? I'm like, I won't. And my kids will go, oh, can't I just stay in your bed? I'm like, look, when you fall asleep, I will scoop you up and put you back into your bed because if you're in my bed, I won't sleep. And we all know that doesn't go doesn't go down well for any of us the next day. So
Well, I
Mama's gonna
think that's
scoop you
one of
up,
my
put you in your
problems.
bed.
Because my
Right.
daughter very often will come into because her room is down the hallway a little bit away. So often during the night, I'll wake up, she's in my bed, or she'll be like her feet, because she spins around in the bed too. She's a horrible sleeper. So I'll have like feet in my face. I'm like,
that doesn't make
okay,
it
she's
easy.
here. And then like I'll pop her back and then she'll be back like within an hour. So that happens too. And so sometimes like I've even left her, like if I've saw like she's gone into my room and fallen asleep, I'm like, oh, okay, she can stay. But then, yeah, it is a broken sleep for me.
No, that's
But
right.
I've sort of normalized it. Like, yeah, I've sort of normalized it for us both, though, where it's like, oh, well, if you're in bed, then that's okay. And because she does get scared. Like, I know she does. When she wakes up in her own room, she'll often come, I'll hear the feet coming, like, boom, 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 boom.
I got scared
And
as
I'll
a
be
kid.
like,
My mother made me sleep on her bedroom floor. You weren't getting in bed with them. I slept on.
well, I
So
don't
did
want
my
to treat my
brothers.
child like a dog. So,
Well,
So you know what? Like,
well, but no, like, yeah, no, look, I know, like, I'm enabling. I do know. I am guilty. But I guess it's just what happens. So I think it does infect my sleep patterns as well because, you know, I have a child that's quite dependent on me. And you're the same, Jeff, with Gabe, I know, where they just end there,
all
then their feet are in your head. And
shit too. I was like, get out of your fucking bed. Their kid's got no business. Stop fucking. That's why you. And now
look,
that fucking kid is in my bed.
I'm going to share something with both of you guys, and this might be something to look at for your children that will then help you with your sleep. So, you know, kids do intuitively what they need to do, you know, and it might be that in both of those cases, your kids actually have an issue with their sensory processing where they need to feel like they're next to another body.
Yes.
So they can settle. So rather than that stimulus, right, and this just comes back to their proprioception. They need that feeling of something solid next to them to feel safe and settled. So rather than that being you can offer different options like a weighted blanket or like a full body sized, you know, you get those full body pillows or a large teddy, something that they can feel snuggled and close to where they get to feel safe and kind of compressed. But I would really encourage you to look at the options around those either full body pillows or weighted blankets and help your child transition to that healthier sleeping pattern because, you know, when they hit 16 or 18 or 21, they're not going to be able to climb into bed with you. Maybe they'll substitute you with their own partner, you know, maybe that will work. But there's going to be a period where it's not going to be okay, you know, and they're going to have to substitute and sort of reacclimatize to using something that they can use on their own. So just a suggestion, but understanding that there's a reason why they're seeking that out. You know, our children don't deliberately try to annoy us. They're just trying to get sleep like we are. You know, they're seeking out, well, maybe sometimes. But, you know, most of the time they're just trying to get a good night's sleep. And all they know is, well, when I go into my you know, mum or dad's bed, that works for me. You know, so I think it's about empowering them and giving them a different option and say, hey, let's try this. I found this really amazing blanket. You know, how does that feel? Give it a go. Or whether it's a gigantic teddy or a body pillow, whatever you think they're going to kind of get into. But, you know, my daughters.
As soon as we're off here, I'm getting a weighted blanket.
Me too. I'm ordering them all to those kids need them.
Yeah.
I'm like, the hell with
And
this.
look, they make them for kids. So obviously you can't have it be too heavy or they're going to feel trapped. So you do need to look at the lightest weight. And all of those companies will have, charts where you look at, okay, if my child's this big, this many kilos, then you want this sort of weighting. But I just know with my daughter, it's absolutely worked a treat. She used to toss and turn and be a very light sleeper. Now with that blanket, she's like out in 10 minutes. It's amazing. Plus we have music playing. Both my children go to sleep listening to music, so they need that auditory stimulus, and that helps them.
Well, actually, Katie, I wanted to talk about that because I spoke about earlier, like I used to listen to meditations and that, and I'm really looking at doing that again just to get myself back into a cycle.
Yeah.
And I promise audience, I'm not plugging Katie's CD, but I am going to definitely try your CD. No, I really want to because Jeff's been telling me. Jeff will do it. Mentoring Katie Underwood. No, because Jeff's been telling me, he's like, oh shit, he's like, I'm really zoning out and chilling out. And so I'm going to give it a go because I think those old meditations work for me. And look, he's even got the props.
Did I not post a picture on the page where I was like this? I did.
You did.
And I'll be honest.
But look,
I'll be honest. I actually did it, Katie, and it knocked me out. It knocked me out real good. I was like, oh my god, I'm so rested and lovely. I was like, just feeling my own. And then because of dancing, I've got my Spotify set to shuffle, and I was like, oh, just listening to your calming voice. And all of a sudden, it's like, some days couldn't get out. And I woke up going like this.
Oh my God,
and then I'm like, these days. I was having a Bardo fest. I was like, I mentioned it to the boys. I was like, that's Katie's voice. I went, oh,
yeah, I really like that.
All the shoulders are going. It's shoulder popping time. Must be a Bardo track.
But look, let me just say before we sort of get off your thing there,
Yep.
I think if you found that podcasts in the past worked, and there is a difference between listening to music and listening to a voice. So if you found that actually the sound of someone speaking was more settling for you, as much as I love my music and I love that the boys do too, I would go to that. I would try that first because that
I did it for a good solid 6 months where it chilled me, it wound me down at night, and it was working well. And I think, and I'm like reflecting now, I'm like, oh shit, that's much more healthier than listening to Judge Judy and fucking the poodle. Like,
And look, also as part of it, when we're talking about sleep hygiene and we talk about consistency, it's also about brain training. So because you said you had 6 months using that recording or those meditations to go to sleep, your brain associates that with sleep, right?
Yes.
So even if you haven't heard it for 2 years, you'll find that the moment you put that on, you'll go to sleep. So for me, at the moment, I have something that I listen to, which is not my own music; it's someone else's music. But my brain has been listening to that on sleep time for the last 2 or 3 years. I barely get through the first track, and that's simply because my brain goes, "Oh, it's zone. I'm out." It's like kind of a sleeping tablet for your brain, but you're doing it with music. So I think, I would go back to whatever it was you were listening to, try that first.
I'll
and
give
then if
you
you
some
don't get
suggestions,
success for that,
Luke.
then, yeah.
Because there's one that worked for my mum too, because I was listening to it and this girl's voice, it's a podcast. I'm doing a bit of a plug for her, but whatever. It's a podcast called You Must Remember This, and it's about classic Hollywood. And her name's Karina Longworth, and her voice is so. This is Karina Longworth, and you're listening to You Must Remember This. And I'm like, oh, and he's zoned out. And then there's another one, Law. So it's I guess urban legendsy kind of podcast, but it's got a lot of piano music in it. as an intro and like.
So you're out by the end of the first intro.
See,
yeah.
I haven't. I'm just like, oh, that's really nice, and then I haven't heard the episode.
I find the clarity of piano is actually too
much for you.
To me, a piano sound is actually more stimulating than relaxing.
Yeah.
So again, it's not about a one size fits all. I think it's about each person trying various things. That's enough. Trying various things and finding what works.
And then when you wake up, you just smash Beautiful on it like this. It's Katie Underwood's the one-stop shop for sleep and waking up, obviously.
Oh, you're funny.
But yeah, no. And look, and people find this kind of stuff through different ways too. Because you know what? 5 years ago, if someone said you were going to listen to meditation music or anything like that, I'd be like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then after I've been pretty open on this show and with you boys about having a pretty horrific, relationship. So those meditations were based around that. It was based around like sort of, just healing from something that was quite traumatic and, narcissism and all those kind of shit. And it was really therapeutic for me at the time because I was definitely going through a time where I thought, well, I'm quite alone in this. Like no one else gets this because when I tell them, they just think, well, that's just fucking crazy. Why would you be in that? But so that helped me. The music was really like there for me every night. It was like an old friend. I was like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to listen to this. And I was sleeping sound. It's just the shift work that come on later. That's just throwing me in a
So,
spin.
Katie, I've got a couple of sleep tips here. Let me see if you agree or disagree with what this little article says. So we've got make sure your bedroom is cool, dark, and quiet, which we've already, discussed.
Ask your parents to help.
Well, this is obviously more aimed at children, but exercise during the day.
No. Do you
think that helps? Yeah. Avoid big meals before bedtime. If I had a glass of warm milk, I'd vomit. But I don't get that. Is that? But
everyone, look.
This is aimed at children.
Whose biggest meal? No. But just in general, the biggest meal for most people is their dinner, right? Which is before bed. I think I've changed that up in my own life because I did work weird hours. I always have my biggest meal is my lunch. I have the tiniest breakfast if I don't skip it, which I'm naughty for. And dinner is usually a smaller meal, like a snack. Almost.
Look, when they're talking about big meals before bedtime, I think it's more about within 2 hours of going to sleep. So, if you're having your meal at 7 and you're not trying to get to sleep until 10 or 11, you're going to be okay. But for people like me, for instance, I'm a chronic late night snacker. But that actually tends to help me go to sleep. But for others, it will, and there's more evidence to suggest that eating just before you go to bed actually disturbs your sleep because it activates your gastrointestinal system, and so your body's in activation rather than in settling. So again, it can work well for some people, but really not well for others.
We've tackled the caffeine and soda thing, and we've talked about having a bedtime routine. But how realistic is it for adults, especially adults with jobs and stuff, to try to go to sleep at the same time every night?
Now, look, that's the only one that I will disagree with. And all of the information that I've read and come across, it's actually not about what time you go to bed. It's about having a consistent time of waking up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
No, I'm feeling it.
Okay, so your circadian rhythm is dictated more by when you wake up. You can't actually control when you get tired. This is the problem. You can't force yourself to go to sleep at the same time every night because different things are going to happen to you through the day. But the one thing that you do have control over is when you choose to wake up. So there's much more evidence to show that a consistent waking time will naturally determine when you're ready to go to bed. So for me, I'll consistently wake at 7 a.m., right? That's school, school kids.
Yep.
Kids are waking up, we're prep time, whatever. Now, some nights I'll be tired at 10. Some nights I won't be tired till 12. But that doesn't matter. if my wake time's 7, then some nights I'll get, sometimes I won't go to sleep till 1 a.m. But it still means that I'm getting somewhere between 6 and 8 hours a night. But it also means that I'm not stressing about, oh my God, I need to be asleep. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence to show that half of the problem around insomnia is getting annoyed with the fact that we're not sleeping when we should be sleeping. That actually allowing yourself to just relax and go, some nights I'm going to get 5 hours. Some nights I'm going to get 7.5. But I'll trust that if I'm waking at the same time every day, that my body will get tired when it's tired, and just trusting that that's okay. And I think that's a big part of letting go of the psychological self-torture that we put ourselves through. Not only are we not sleeping, but then we're giving ourselves a hard time about the fact that we're not sleeping, which is doing what? Only increasing our stress, which isn't helping. So
what is it that you're waking up or you're finally falling to sleep really like as you should be getting up? Like why does that happen?
Well, it's just exhaustion. I think that's all that is. You're literally falling asleep because you're exhausted. So, and I think one of the common disruptors to our sleep routine is that, during the week, we've got our set wake time. And then we get to the weekend and we're like, I'm going to sleep in until 10 a.m. I mean, I don't know.
Shit, I wish.
But yeah, exactly, right? It doesn't happen. But
no kids here.
That we want to be waking at the same time. So that's the only thing. Everything else on that little chart you showed us, I think, is really, really helpful. And all of the rules that we use for helping kids go to sleep still apply to us as adults. We can still look at that info and get a lot from it. But for adults, I think it's definitely more important for that setting our wake time. I think for kids, setting a consistent bedtime, absolutely yes. I agree that that's really important for children. But they need a hell of a lot more sleep than we do. But adults, set your wake time and let the rest just fall into place.
Would you say a little more self-care is probably going to really aid us in getting better sleep?
Yeah, of course. So, this is the other thing. I'll come back to my comment about we're not robots. We can't just push ourselves all through the day. Stress levels are up, caffeine levels are up, mental activities up, and then go, oh, now I want to just switch the off button. So obviously one of the other common disruptors of sleep is having chronic stress in our lives, whether it's mental stress from being busy, whether it's emotional stress from being in a challenging relationship like Luke mentioned, or maybe having family dramas, or maybe one of your kids is sick, or all of the various other things that can create emotional stress. So really looking at ways that we can support ourselves through the day when we're awake to help ourselves feel better, be able to relax and look after ourselves, so that when we come time to put our head on the pillow, there's not such a massive gap between where we are in our daytime operation and where we want to be in nighttime. So absolutely self-care through the day. But you know what? That's a whole other podcast.
That is a whole other podcast. And that's probably a good spot to wrap it up for today. So thank you everyone for joining us. It was a very interesting chat, actually. I think, I'm going to go have a nap later, so, whatever you guys need to do.
And the boys are going to go off and order weighted blankets for their kids.
They are.
Weighted blankets.
Everyone.
It really works.
It's nighttime here. For you bitches, it's daytime. But I know, I don't care what you said. I'm going to listen to this.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's Katie. That would be your latest album, Mantra Dreaming, which is available on Spotify, iTunes, all good stuff. And you can even get a physical copy. Don't be embarrassed. It's great. It actually does work. And it does work. And lately, when I know that, because I'm trying to be like a bit of an adult and go to boot camp and do all these things. So when I'm going to bed at 2:00 in the morning and I know that I have to be up at 6:00 in the morning, I go, all right, I know that I need to relax, stop touching the phone, put on Mantra Dreaming and do it. And make sure you stop it so you don't get a Bardo greatest hits and all that kind of stuff happening. And it does work. I make it probably 2 tracks in and I'm like, and I'm out. And
right. Well,
so there you go. Approved by the panel. Yay! All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining us, and you'll see from us. See from us. That's see and hear at the same time.
I think you need some more sleep.
Or less caffeine.
love that.
You'll see us again very, very soon. Merry birthday, Mess, and all the good things. Mwah, 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 mwah.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.